I started school there at Green Springs in first grade, but for some reason Mother took me out, and she moved to Charlottesville, and that's where I did first grade, in Charlottesville. It was a children's home there, and that's where I was stayed at. And I had got every disease that year that I could think of. Both measles and mumps, the pink eye, whooping cough. How I ever passed first grade, I don't know, but apparently I did. It was lonely. It was quite an experience for a young boy. We had to walk clean down almost the end of Market Street to the school. And in February of that year, I was still up there. Mother met one of the Calvin boys. She got married in February. And when school was out, she come and got me, and we moved to Somerset. It was different then. Everything was pretty much, as you know, homegrown. Particularly back in the war, World War II, during that period when I came to Somerset. Flour was that was part of your ration from the farm. The flour came off of the farm. They took it somewhere to heavy ground, and meal too, corn. We had plenty of milk. I don't remember eating steak or beef. We raised our own hogs, and there was no freezers. You had to can everything.
Did you have electricity in your house?
Yes.
Did you have a telephone?
No. We did not have a telephone. We had running water. We did not have a bathroom. So we had to go to the path and use the Scissor and Roebuck catalog.
On cold, snowy nights?
Yes. You hated that walk. I got in trouble one night. Mother and Randolph were on the front porch in the swing. And I'd been put to bed. But anyway, the restroom was downstairs, the bathroom was downstairs. Well, I got the urge. I didn't know Mother and Dad, Randolph were out there, so to speak. I found out later. But anyway, I just heisted the window up and relieved myself, and they're out there talking. The first thing you know, there's water running down the drain. I didn't get whipped, but I got scolded the next day. So take a chamber pot or something to bed with you. Funny. And I had a little dog there. It's called Popeye, and he was my buddy. And if I got in trouble, well, like one time I got in trouble and got a little spank. Well, they tried to spank me. My job was to go to the wood pile and pick up a bucket of chips. Well, I was a little lazy, so I just picked up some sawdust and put in the bottom of the bucket instead of scratching around to find sticks and chips. And I put the chips on top. Well, when I found out about it, then I was going to get a spanking. But that little dog would not let anyone touch me. You'd have to fasten him up, otherwise he was a little Boston bull, and you couldn't touch me. Back in that day, you could do without money to a certain extent. You raised everything. The women canned. They had a tremendous garden. Working on a farm, you had ration. And back in that day, you didn't have as many cars as you do today. For a period of time there, we didn't have a car. Very few families didn't have but one car. And so everything was different. I remember in the World War II, I go back a little bit. I remember ration. I remember doing without sugar. We had honeybees. We raised honeybees. We had 10 hives. And Mother would cook with honey instead of sugar. I remember the troop trains. For some reason, I knew that Roosevelt's body was coming through. And I don't remember who told me, but I went out on a hill right at the track and to wait for it. Apparently it stopped at Weyburn and refueled. And I remember it coming by. I could not tell you whether it was the morning or afternoon. I think it was afternoon. And I remember it coming through, watching it. It was 4 or 5 cars pulled by a locomotive. and Roosevelt was in the back part, and I could look through the windows, and I could see the casket with a flag on it, and a soldier standing at attention at each corner. But before the train got there, I saw this 2 truckloads of soldiers going along the Brickyard Road pretty fast, cloud of dust. And I was told that every crossing, the soldiers got out and they would stand at attention, and they would leapfrog each other to the next crossing and stand at attention. The train was not going fast, it was going fairly slow. But I remember that pictures, and certain things hit us in life that just will leave an image on our brain, and I had that photograph on my brain. I'll never forget it. Somerset was very easy. Somerset in that day was very friendly to children. No matter where you went, they were glad to see you. At least you got that impression, the merchants included. And I made fast friends that first summer. The first person I met, of course, was we call a pumpkin. I call her Pumpkin, and she was born on Halloween. That's how she got the nickname Doris Carvin. We come fast buddies, and that's the first friend that I got. And we would have back there then, where Pumpkin lived and where I lived on Milford Farm, it wasn't in trees in between. And so she'd put a big puller case out of it on a stick, white flag, and hang it up. And she was free, and come on over. And I'd see the sign, and I would run on over there. And then, of course, I met Bill and Guy. And the 4 of us there for about 3 or 4 years, we were sort of inseparable.
Now, their names were?
Guy Muller, and of course Bill Roberts, Claude Roberts' son. And Claude was a rural carrier here in Somerset. He came to Somerset, I understand, in 1914. Bill Johnston did too. So, but yeah, we were pals, and we would have Bill Roberts was sort of the leader in the group. We'd meet at his place and find out what we were going to do that day. And
but he liked to sleep in the morning.
Oh yes, he wouldn't. We'd have to go up and drag him out of bed a lot of times. He had a black cocker spaniel they were very close. He was real fat, but the dog would sleep with him, and we'd go up and we'd try to wake Bill up. The dog would jump off the bed, and he'd help pull the covers back off of Bill, and we'd grab him by the feet and pull him out of bed. Bill was even at an early age, he was very mechanical inclined. I remember he took an old motor off of a wash machine, the kind that you would stomp. He made a go-kart. Now this was back in 44 or 45, and he made a go-kart. Another time he made a cannon, which was a pipe, and we'd drop marble down in it, pat a wad of marble and put a firecock on the other end, and shoot it at the corn crib there, and it would go through an inch board, oak board. And so Bill was very mechanical.
Winters were more severe back then, weren't they?
Oh gosh, yes, yeah. I remember snow being on the ground pretty near all winter. I remember pipes freezing in the ground, almost 2 foot in the ground. Yeah, winters seemed a whole lot harsher. We as kids, we enjoyed sleigh riding. And when the snow, we would pack up a trail there and we would try it out, and we had great fun with that. The best hill, when it made a turn there, and it ran parallel to creek. The other part went straight into the creek, so therefore we used one as parallel, and they didn't lose a sled in the creek. We at night we'd start a fire. We'd have a fire there, but that was a lot of fun. And funny story about Bill, he got himself in trouble that time. I don't know where Pumpkin ever did. Well, she'd gotten a little older at that point, I guess, and wasn't palling with us like she did at one time. And anyway, she had the fastest sled in Somerset, a little short sled. And Bill was pretty hefty. He was bigger than Guy and myself. And Bill, something happened to his sled. He didn't have a sled. We were going sleigh riding. So he went over and he pleaded with Pumpkin, begged with Pumpkin, talked with her to lend him her sled. And she says, "No, I'm not going to lend you my sled. That's my sled. Something happens, I won't have a sled. And I'm going to beat you up if something happens to my sled." Well, Bill got the sled. We went over there. And there was a hump inside the hill about 9/10 of the way up the hill. And maybe further down the hill. Anyway, Bill sat down on the sled and Guy and I got him and pushed him. And we were about 20 yards or so, got him going fast. Well, when he hit that hump, he went off up in the air about 2 or 3 feet. And when he come down, the runners just flattened out. His weight broke it. Well, that ruined the sledding for the rest of the day for Bill, because Guy and I refused to go with him to take his sled back. I never got Pumpkin's tale of it when he brought it back. I never knew what happened. Something was going on all the time. We played with marbles. Back in the 2nd and 3rd grade, all of us had a pocket full of marbles, and we'd play marbles at school at recess and all of that. And in the summer, we would play softball in the field there where the pasture party is today, across from the shop, and we had a lot of fun. I remember one instance, I was thinking about it. I don't know where Ms. Roberts was. Ms. Roberts was a nice person, and she always had a cake on the kitchen table and a glass of milk in the refrigerator, and we boys could get a piece of cake and a glass of milk. Granny Carvin was the same way. She'd have something on the table, and we were always welcome. But I remember going up there one day, the 3 of us, and a bunch of us going to meet us down there to play ball. And Bill got went in the back porch on the closet, and he got this jug out. I didn't know what it was. It was blackberry wine. And I poured a water glass full. It was good, because it was sweet. They didn't drink that much, but all 3 of us got sort of high. I really got high, because I remember laughing and talking, and I remember getting up to bat, and I'd see 2 base softballs coming to me. I didn't know which one to hit. Back then, bicycle was a thing, and I learned to ride a bicycle when I couldn't even get on it. I'd get on a hillside by a fence and climb up on the fence and get on the bike and drift down the hill. After about a dozen times, I think I learned to balance and to ride it. The other thing is that we went barefooted. School was out, we went barefoot. And until I started working in the field, of course, then I had to wear shoes. Got older. But I remember one summer, my feet were so tough, maybe Bill and Guy's was too, I could step on a honeybee and he couldn't sting me. I could squash him, and it wouldn't bother, it wouldn't sting at all. That's how tough my feet. And of course, when school started, you had to get new shoes because your feet would spread out, and the first week would be miserable.
You had a swimming hole too, didn't you?
Yes, Blue Run Creek back then was clean. It was clear. You could see Blue Run Creek at any point. It wasn't grown up like it is today. Up here between here and Center Store, both bottoms was wide open. You could see all up and down it. It was great fishing. Everyone would fish at the trestle, as we call it, down here where it goes, the railroad goes over the creek. And the fish was not huge. I remember Bill caught about 2-pound catfish at the trestle once. That's the largest fish I saw caught there. But eels and mudcats, perch, and what they call a chum. I think they call them whitings, but it's what we call white chums, and it's very good. Back there then, we didn't have rod and reels. just a plain pole. And if you're lucky enough to get a bamboo pole, then that was a Cadillac. And just string, like coming out of a feed bag or something, that would be our string. But Blue Run was a good fishing place.
How about swimming?
Swimming, just down at the trestle on the north side of the bridge. The road went under the bridge across the creek, and it was a low bridge and it would flood regularly. But on the north side of that, on the Walker property, there was a swimming pool, and we would dig that out, dam it up, and Mr. Summers, it was sort of a game. He was not a mean guy, he was a nice guy. And he would tear it down when he'd come home for the weekend. He'd tear it down, we'd build it back Monday morning. And it was, of course, we were small, it was over our heads, and we had a diving board. It was nice swimming, pretty good size. Blue Run, the highest water I've seen in Somerset, when the hurricane came through in '69 or '70 through Nelson County, the water covered both of those holes up down there in the creek, and you know they are huge. The water was almost up on the track.
Wow. And
that washed the bridge out, and that's when the new road was put in. But then again, that was extreme, because starting in '53 we had a drought, and it came through, and in '54 Blue Run dried up. The fish never came back when it started raining. It was wet for about '57, about 3 years. There was a period of a drought there, and Blue Run has never been fishable like that since. But it was a fun time.
yeah,
It was a good place, nothing going on, nothing, to bother you. And we kids had to run of the place, of the farm.
yeah.
So the first few years until I was about 11, I guess, summers I had almost a free run. Of course, back in that day, we burnt wood or coal. We all had wood cook stoves, and my job was to keep the wood split and the wood box full and that sort of thing. But when I was about 11, then I worked regularly in the dairy and also on the farm. So the summers was a little more, not quite as much fun
Right.
after that. But I started in the dairy. My job was to wash the cows' bags before the milkers were put on them, keep ahead of my stepfather for the milkers, and I would wash them off, make they were clean, give them feed. Then afterwards I would clean up. And afterwards, when I got older, then I would carry the milk out, but then I was small to carry the milk out at first. I think I started out with $5 a month, but my folks was trying to save enough money to buy a farm, and eventually they did. Some years later, they saved enough to buy a farm.
That was the turkey farm.
That was a turkey farm. When I started to work, and I didn't mind, I have no regrets. Mother would patch my clothes and send me to school. No one else had patched clothes. And so therefore, when I would work, I'd save my money, I'd buy my clothes. And I'd able to wear something besides bib overalls to school when no one else was wearing any. And that sort of thing. And yeah, I saved up, was sort of tight. That's the way I was taught. I was a Tyree, but I was raised as a Calvin. And if you know the Calvin boys, then all of them are pretty close. Their father raised them that way.
What were some of the other things that you did for fun?
Well, Halloween was always fun. Was for a couple of years there when we boys were about 13 and 14. Mr. Johnson would get the blunt of our prankster, and of course he hated it. He would try to catch us, and we'd wait until most of the time we'd wait until he closed, and then we'd soap his windows up. Irish soap, nothing destructive, but he had a key ring, and we'd hear that candle keys rattle, he couldn't catch us. I remember a policeman once that said that he would go to sleep, and he was parked across the street from the courthouse. Everything's different there now, but he parked. That's where he'd park. And he was driving. Bill didn't have a permit, by the way. He was about 14. He was big for his age. His daddy would let him in the car, and we'd get in the car and we'd go on. Anyway, we stopped and we smoked it. We did all his windows up. He couldn't see at all. He was still asleep. So we back up, come on down, screech your wheel and blow the horn, and he'd jump up. He couldn't chase us. He couldn't see. But we did funny things. And here in Somerset, the stores next door, they were rivals to each other. They were different. Johnson, because he had a larger charge account, had more stuff than most of the farm owners and so forth dealt with him. And the other store wasn't that well stocked, but it was a hangout place, you know. But it was rival between the two of them. In fact, the one store would give us bar soap to dudes on the other store. So at that particular time, the owner of the store across the road, she had a nephew that was running the store for her, one of the Edens boys. There's no harm in mentioning his name. And we were pals with him, and he was Agassiz. Well, that particular store, when they closed up, they had shutters. He'd close the shutters, we'd help him do it. And he'd have a pin that put through. And on the other side, he'd drop a nail through the hole in the pin, so you couldn't open the shutter, you couldn't move that pin. Well, Bill Roberts, being the fellow that he was, he figured out, well, all he had to do was turn that pin over and jiggle it, the nail would drop out. You could pull the pin out. So we soaked his windows up. Oh, you should have seen him the next morning when he come and found it. We stuck everything back, the pin and everything back as it was. But things like that. We did a lot of hay rides. Bicycle was a thing. All of us had a bicycle. But we had funs. We would snipe hunt. For someone that didn't know, hide and seek, we did a lot of that. Right. But we kids, none of us were destructive. I started in second grade in fall of '43 in Gordonsville. Somerset School had closed. I missed it by 1 year, and I went there in second grade. Back in that day, the buses did not go into back roads. So if I didn't catch a ride out with Carlene and her mother, then I'd have to walk, which is almost a mile, out to Johnson's store, and that's where the buses would pick us up. I remember being very cold. I remember standing and waiting for the bus and flapping your arms, trying to stay warm and all that. And the bus was much smaller. The heater was not as good. Yeah, I was real small. I remember going to the 7th grade, Ms. Harrell, and she was tough on us, but she come to me and put both hands under my shoulders there, under my armpits, and pick me up off the floor. I was that small. I was the smallest one in school, but no one ever picked on me. I grew up on a farm and I worked. And a couple now and then would try, but I was probably the strongest in the class. Maybe the smallest, but I was the strongest. We were supposed to go to Gordonsville for 2 years. Back then they didn't have 8th grade. I missed 8th grade by a year. And so Bill wanted to play football, and so the three of us, we hitched a ride into Orange, so we would not have to go to Gordonsville. No one ever stopped us. Evidently we enrolled, at least I enrolled myself, because Mother didn't go in the school. No one asked any questions. Why are you doing this? Why are you coming here? Then the second year, we just plain got on the bus. we'd ride the bus to Gordonsville, and instead of going there to the last year of high school, we'd just get on the bus and ride on to Orange. And I grew a lot that one year because I remember starting school and I happened to felt a little air around my ankles, and I looked down and my pants were up above my socks. So I'd grown that much in that one year. So I had to get out and get new wardrobe. And then right after that, I become 16, and so I bought my own car. And so I drove myself to high school.
You bought your own car at age 16?
As soon as right after I got my permit. I was the only kid in high school that owned his own car. You talk about a girl getter.
There is a specific date in early March in your life that is very important.
Yes, I celebrated that yesterday. And I don't know how many girls I've dated. I don't know how many Ann has dated. Boys, that is. But I remember there was a dance in March the 6th in 1953. And Bill Roberts was dating a girl in Orange at the time. He'd been dating her for a while. And the girl he was dating was Ann's best friend. And Bill says, well, come on and double date. And I said, Doris, I'll get you a date. And she got me a date with Ann Coleman. At least I told me that she was available. And on March the 3rd, I asked Ann for a date. And she said yes. So when we could, I didn't start celebrating that, but sometime after we were married and when we could afford it, every March the 3rd I would ask Ann for a date. And on the 6th, and we would do something on the 6th. So this March the 3rd, I asked Ann, is she free? And let's go out and get something to eat. So yesterday we went to Shadwell and had a good meal. So
50 years.
66 years. It was our marriage was made in heaven. We complement each other. Yeah, she's kept me straight. It's the best thing that ever happened to me. And we've been living in this house since then. Mr. Johnston had everything in the store. Of course, before my time, it even had more than that because he had automobile parts. Because he owned a shop outdoors that Maynard ran and worked on cars. So he had Model T parts and all of that, Model A, and he had everything. If he didn't have it, you didn't need it. Put it that way. But he was very good, accommodating. He'd go out of his way to help people and to get what they wanted, do that, so forth. And
you get seed and flour and boots and coveralls.
well, it's the only place you could get it back in that day.
And they had a big ladder that ran along the side of the wall so you could climb up and get stuff off the shelves.
And charge accounts was big. Now, Bill Johnston ran a larger charge account than any of the other stores in Somerset. And so the farm owners would deal with him. And they would come in. He could cut a half a pound of cheese or a pound of cheese, and he wouldn't be off an ounce. He'd weigh it. He kept a sharp knife, a thin knife. To cut cheese, you need a thin knife, one that you can take your hands and bend. And he'd cut the cheese with. I'd help him out in the store. I could never learn. I grew up with Saturday Evening Post. And Norman Rockwell, his paintings, I love them. I got a calendar of them now. But anyway, the pot-bellied stove, you'd see it in pictures and all, people sitting around with the crackers and the cheese and all of that. And I remember that, and I have experienced that. And I'd love to do that. After I was married, we didn't close the lobby of the post office until 7:30 at night. And so I'd go out and close the post office. I'd lock a door and I'd go in and I'd listen to those men sitting around the stove there talking. And I'd learned so many things. And I was doing it all, and I was working all day. And the brick plant had come, and they were after me to come to work for them, which I didn't do. But I told Mr. Johnson, I says, look, if you want me to stay here, you're going to have to help me out, or I'm going to work my 2 hours and I'll have to work somewhere else. And we worked something out for a couple of years, and I stayed there. And he promised me he'd retire at 62.
You know, we're sitting here talking and I hear a train coming through. A very familiar sound to you.
I don't hear them. I'm so used to them. I've lived this close to the track since 1955. Well, since 1943. And so I don't hear them. I don't pay attention to them.
But the train and Somerset are hand in glove. I mean, how many trains were coming through here when you were a kid?
It was a lot. Of course, all of them were steam engines, locomotives. The railroad track in that day was something enchanting or interesting to we boys. Because if we had a penny, we'd put it on the track. We'd put a small rock on the track and watch it crushed and that sort of thing. And then too, in the summer, the railroad track was, back in that day, was clear. Of course, it was always burning, you know.
From the hot box.
And believe it or not, back in that day, you could pick wild strawberries by the gallon in the summer, in June, on the railroad track. I remember that. They were just as sweet as they could be. I remember that in the late 40s, early 50s, the diesel engine was when few of them would come in through occasionally, and they were as much curiosity as a steam engine would become today. People would run to see the diesel. I saw almost a tragedy there to my best friend Bill Roberts. This was February 1955 is the reason I remember that date. And they had a big 1.5 ton truck, and it was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And it was some snow, and it was ice on the railroad track. There were no bells, no gates. It was just lights. Bill come back. He was tired. He made the turn up on the track. His truck was still at an angle, and he made the turn. The sun was in his eyes. The train, I was looking at the big window at the post office, and I saw it happening. I thought, oh my gosh. And I saw the train hit the truck. The truck disappeared. I saw the hood fly up over top of the truck. And it hit him because the boards there were slick and everything.
Just slipped him out of the way.
It slipped him right out the way, and he couldn't get a full hold of the truck. It cut that truck from the passenger side at an angle, clean back to the headlight on the driver's side where Bill was sitting. Left that part. Took the motor, everything out the other part. And it just slid him right on out the way. It was half a dozen passenger trains in that day coming through here.
Every day.
Every day.
Wow.
In fact, as a kid, I had, because I was self-sufficient, I had pretty much a room. Mother didn't bother me. I'd do, as long as I didn't get in trouble.
Right.
And if I got in trouble, then that's something different. Right. But anyway, when I'd finish up at the dairy, I'd wash off real quick, and I'd run to Somerset, and I'd catch the train that stopped, 136, catch it on the way to Orange for 10 cents. Ride to Orange, catch a movie. 10 o'clock when the silk mill let out, catch people coming home, get a ride home. When the railroad came through, it cut a lot of farms in half. And it cut Milford, that's where I grew up at. It cut it in half. And in 1954, Carson Schuler made a deal with Webster Brick at Roanoke to sell his land, and he sold it to the brick company. And that was in '54, and the plant was started. It opened in 1957. Started making brick there.
Oldest industry in Orange County, as I understand it, other than agriculture.
Yes, and it served a good purpose, Phil. The brick plant employed people that would have had trouble getting jobs somewhere else. for lack of a better word, common labor, as we called it. People that did not have much education, and they would work there. And the brick plant was a good company. They were good to the community. If you needed something, you needed a tractor or something, they would lend it to you. Yeah, they were good to the community. Weyburn was the fueling station, as you know. It was built, the first one was built in 1880 some, and that's where the trains were fueled and all that. When they double tracked in 1915, up until that point it was wooden. And maybe it was placed 3 times, but the last one was placed was a gigantic cement apparatus. It stood 80, 100 feet over the track. And everything had to be fueled in a hurry. So you had an elevator that carried the coal up and put it in this top of this building. And water they pumped from the trestle pan, all the way up to water it. And when they changed that, when it stopped using that, when diesel came through, then it was blown off the track in about 1954, somewhere in that period. They loaded explosions. They blew that thing right off the track as if it was a tree and laid it right on over. Wow. Blew the whole thing. It's gigantic. The cement's still up there. They pushed it back to the edge and broke it up and pushed it back out to the edge and all that. Mr. Johnston and I had patched up our differences and become pretty close, because at lunchtime I would stop there and I'd help him work the mail, all of them. And back then there was a lot of mail came through Somerset, and I would help him. And I guess when I graduated in June, and I worked on the farm that summer. And in September was when Mr. Johnston asked me to come to work for him. I started September 1st, 1954. Jack Woodruff people were sort of afraid of him. A big guy. And he drove that little old Crosby, which was right on the road, like a small bread box. But Miss Eleanor Nall went to cross the water once. And why she didn't have enough hay, I don't know if she knew or whatever. But anyway, her cows were pretty hungry. And they would hear a tractor or something, and they'd run out to the road and lower this field right here by me. And he saw it one day where he goes home and he sends a load of hay out, and he fed them. He fed them till she got back. If he saw a dog, stray dog out that was hungry, he'd go in the store, buy him a loaf of bread, and bring it out and give it to him. He was very protective of his farm. He patrolled it. And my step-grandfather, Nathan, Mr. Carvin, I call him Mr. Carvin, one Saturday morning, or Sunday morning, whenever it was, the patch of woods where Philip Roberts' house is now was best squirrel hunting place. It's big trees and good squirrel hunting. He'd gone over and got some squirrels, shotgun. Well, Mr. Woodruff heard him. He couldn't catch him over there. Well, I saw Mr. Carvin come on up across the hill there, going in the back door there and lay a squirrel down. He had 3 or 4 squirrels, and I went on in the house before he cleaned them. And Mr. Woodruff whips up in the yard there, wheels around that little old car and gets out. I won't say the language. Nathan, you get your out here. I want to see you. It's the first time I saw Mr. Woodruff. Scared me to death. Anyway, he goes on out. Of course, Mr. Carvin was kind of rough himself, but he was very meek this time. And he went out, and Mr. Woodruff told him, said, Nathan, I know you over in my woods killing my squirrels. You better not let me catch you over there. And you're going to be very sorry. Your rear end's going to be very sore. He's carried a shotgun with him all the time with him patrolling over there. So that's the first time I saw Mr. Woodruff. When I went to work at the post office, I got to know him. He a gentle guy, very nice, and he took a liking to me. And he sent a lot of money orders, but he couldn't or wouldn't fill them out himself, maybe his handwriting, and I always filled them out for him. And so I got on a good side of him there. Mm-hmm. And he was a nice guy. I had heard well, I know he had them. I heard that he bought 2 or 3 pair of Canadian geese in, and this was back in the 40s. And they were saying maybe that's why the geese are so use Somerset as a stopping over part now. And they got wild. He let them leave. It's possible. Who knows? He had a nice fruit orchard, apple orchard, going into Hilton Farm. And a lot of people that boat dust, Mr. Woodruff was in for the night, they'd go in the road there and they'd help themselves to the apples. No, that he took very good care of them. So, but he was a nice guy. This is another image that I've got, and it was probably half a pickup load of mail waiting for 136, and waiting for it to come through. And he had it piled there, and Jack Woodruff down here, and he would mail some eggs, 2 or 3 dozen. Maybe it'd been as many as 6, I don't know. It was a good sized box, metal box. And he would mail them. She was up in Irvine, New York, and he would mail them to her. And back then you could depend on the post office, the mail, and they would be delivered within a day or 2. So you could do that. But anyway, and we had adorable old maid down the road here, and her sister in the car. The train that was coming through, and she had stopped for the track. The gates weren't there then. She had stopped. She'd pulled up pretty close. Well, 18 came through, and he threw that bag off. Well, he was on target, but he hit that pile of packages and the eggs on the top. He hit a direct hit. That box just exploded all over her car, and oh man, she turned around, come back up, giving me the devil, denied to have better sense than to, well, it wasn't me, said the guy on the train, didn't he have better sense than to throw eggs off a train? What's wrong with that guy? Where was he raised at? Was he raised in the North? Bill Johnston was an interesting guy. He was very tight. He came to Somerset in 1914, but apparently he left at some period because he served in World War I, because he got gassed. And he had a nervous habit, and so therefore he would always be sniffing, you know, when he'd get a little nervous, or saw a good-looking woman, he'd get a little nervous. He'd, you know, prance a little bit, get a little nervous. And he said the reason of that was he was gassed. And it might have been, I don't know. Bill Johnson bought the store, and he built his house in 1926.
The guy by the name of Millington, he came out one day, and I saw him through the window. Down at the depot, he started taking his clothes off. Well, he come on across the track, and he was heard saying when he come across the track, he said, "Ready or not, Miss Herndon, ready or not, here I come." Oh, man.
Miss Eleanor was quite a card. She was, I analyzed her, and she was one that demanded respect. She demanded service. She wouldn't tell you that, but her air about her. And she would run out to the post office, or she'd run to the store. Park a car not on side the road, in the middle of the road, not in the middle of the road, but on her side of the road, and holler out what she wanted or something, and Bill Johnson would take it out to her, and she'd expect me to take the letters out to her. I would not do it. Bill Johnson would, but I would not do it. And things are better that's taboo for you. What her fishing hole there on the side of the bridge there was, in our opinion, was the best in Somerset, because we weren't supposed to be there. There was 2 places in Somerset we could not set foot on, and that was Miss Eleanor's and Jack Woodruff's. We would stay off of it. And we'd go down there as boys and fish, and then it was clear from her house upstairs. I understand she had a telescope where she'd watch her farm workers, and she would evidently see us down there fishing. Well, she'd come out of her driveway with a cloud of dust, and she had a maroon Packer, and in the 40s. And we'd see that thing coming, and of course we'd get under the bridge and hide, get out there and hide our fish. She had gotten on up in age a little bit, and she had a driver, a local lady, a nice lady, but the lady was pretty good size, pretty hippie. Miss Eleanor wasn't skinny, but she still had a figure, and so they were going to Waynesboro, of all places, to a chiropractor, and so this lady drove her over there, and they got over there, and Miss Eleanor got out the car, went on up towards the door, and got to feeling herself, and she come back and said, you know, so-and-so, I forgot my panties. Will you lend me yours? Well, she could have got both her legs one side. The lady had to take her downtown and buy a pair of panties. But Miss Eleanor, I followed the thrash machine as a kid, and Miss Eleanor would she would feed everyone at lunchtime, and she'd feed us on the back porch. She had a pretty long back porch, long table. Boy, could she feed. Oh my heavens. As a young kid, I don't know, it must have been about 1940. Anyway, there was still, you had horses, and I drove the wagon there. But anyway, Miss Eleanor would, for the kid, she would pay 40 cents an hour. And if you ate, she'd knock a nickel off. So I got 35 cents an hour. Adults, she paid 45, and if you ate, she'd knock a nickel off. And you never saw such a feed in all your life that she put out there. Of course, she didn't do it. She had ladies doing it. And Phil, we thought nothing of it. Back in that day, we didn't think much about it. All black and white ate together on that porch. We ate together, thought nothing of it. We were hungry. We didn't feel like going back to work. Miss Eleanor called me once because I would not spy on her men. She wanted to know what kind of mail they were getting and what they were doing and all that, and I would not do it. And she said, well, turned when she went over and said, you're not very Christian. Well, I don't know. Seemed like me, it was just the opposite. But I enjoyed Miss Eleanor. I became postmaster on October the 1st, 1962. Mr. Johnston had, as he promised, had told me back in April or May that he would retire in June. And back there then it was a political appointment. Before then, they changed it in the 40s. Before then, 1948, each time the administration changed, then the postmaster changed, Republican or Democrat, and it would change. And so the Democrats were in, and so the Democratic Party in Orange County actually made the appointment. What they would do would pick someone and send it to Howard Smith, our representative in Congress. And he would make the nomination on the floor of the representatives, and they would pass on it and send it to the Senate, and they'd vote on it, and then the president would sign a commission to make that appointment. So I had to go out and work for that appointment, and I did not know anyone, but I knew people that knew someone else. And so I went around and got each one of Rod Cowd, I talked to him first. He was the chairman. And he actually had the power to make the appointment. But he wanted to see who else was running, who else was interested. And so I went and got the other 4 people to sign it that support me, and took it back to Rod, and he says, okay, the job's yours. Appointment's yours. And he was my buddy after that. So I have a handwritten signature of John Kennedy on my commission, which I'm very proud of. Well, the first thing I was told that the post office was in Johnston's store, in the store part.
Right.
And that was an interesting thing because they had old potbelly stove in there and all of that, and the post office was there in the corner somewhere. On the side of the building there, probably Bill Johnston built that after he became postmaster in '32. He probably built that then. But back in that day, it jumped from across the road to across the road, from one side to the other. Whenever the Republicans got in, it went west of 231, and other Democrats east of 231. They would jump back and forth.
But when you were appointed, that practice stopped, correct?
It stopped before I was appointed. Back then, it was mail was brought by train, and Somerset was sort of the drop-off point. Copper and Orange was the other, and mail for Rochelle, Pratt's, Rhoda, Locustdale, and some from Madison would come through Somerset. And back then it was mail order, you know, and it would be a pickup load of packages a day coming off the train. 135 would go south at 11:30, and they would drop it off and bring it up, and we'd have to work that. And it'd be mixed in with Somerset mail. All of it would be mixed together, and we'd have to sort it out. The letters would be mixed up, and we had a mail messenger that would pick it up and bring it up. And at 1:36, about 5:30, 6 o'clock at night, would come going north, and he would pick up things we got later on. But going back to your question, you could mail a letter in Somerset, say 9 o'clock, and it's possible it'd be delivered by 9:30 in Orange, not earlier, because we would hang mail on a pole, and we would divide the mail equally at bottom and top and tie a belt around the middle. And so therefore we would hang it, and the arm would hit it in the middle. It would flap over that, and they would pull it in, and they would work it. And back then we would have, at 9 o'clock in the morning, we'd have a direct pack of letters. If you had as many as over half a dozen letters, you would put a face instead of just a little piece of paper on the back of the bottom letter and tie a band around it, put a rubber band on it, and that was a direct. And they knew that when the guy got it on a railroad car. And so therefore he had just throw it in an orange bag, throw it up in orange, and pick it up and take it right on out.
So they were actually sorting mail on board the train?
Yes, yes. Post office railroad car. I saw that car. I toured the Post Office Museum in Washington, D.C. about 10 years ago. And I went there, and they had a railway car there. And it was actually the one that came through here, because I went and looked at the letter boxes where they sorted, and there was Somerset. There was Barbersville, Montpelier, all of that. And so, yeah, that chill went over me when I saw it. No one else paid attention to it, but
Right.
yeah, I would. Also, at each stop, like at Somerset, there was a pole with a light before you get to the crossing. And that was a sign. The whistle would tip the guy on the car to get ready and get to the door. The light would show him, and as soon as he hit that light, he would throw the bag off. But this one particular time, there was snow on the ground, and this was at Christmas, and the bag hit that pole and just busted. It was a lot of letters in it. It was Christmas, so it was probably about all you can put in it. And I went down and picked up all I could find. It was at least a foot of snow. Well, that particular winter, the snow stayed on the ground all year, pretty near a foot of the snow, except until February, and it melted. And someone found this pack of letters down there, and I brought them up right to us. So we delivered the Christmas cards in
April.
In April. It was in February. Back in that early time in the post office there, people ordered by Sears, Montgomery Ward, Spiegel, all of that. And this lady would get a package every Friday. small package from either one of them. I don't know which one. Every Monday, the package would be sent back. Well, I finally figured out this good Christian lady was ordering a dress, wearing it at church on Sunday, and sending it back on Monday. But, you know, now people are ordering by mail, internet, you know. It's made a full circle.
Yeah.
So it's coming through the mail again. I noticed, I was still in the old post office on by beside the store. And I noticed, well, what got my attention was this kid from, I found out who his family was, from Madison. He lived up in one of the little small areas up there. Came down and rented a box. Well, he was a little hazy about, he wasn't moving here, because I asked him, all of that. He was a little hazy about what information why he wanted the box and so forth. But I went on and rented the box. And I noticed he never got a light bill, never got any mail, anything like that. And then one day this little package came through like it wasn't, they didn't have them in that day, little cassette containers, and it was leaking powder. Well, I sent it to the postal inspector, and he analyzed, and it was talcum powder. But we had figured that it was he was doing it to see as trial run. And I delivered it, and sure enough, a week or two later, here come this little package. It was from Germany or somewhere. It was foreign, and it came in, and I immediately sent it. I'd already had contact. I immediately sent it to the inspector, and he analyzed it, and it was drugs. It was heroin, I think, whatever. Cocaine. It was cocaine. Anyway, they set up. Sent an inspector down. He spent a couple days with me. They were in the post office hiding. Someone come in. He'd duck under the counter, and the boy finally come in, and I felt sorry for him. And anyway, and I had a notice in the box. I didn't put it in the mailbox. I had it in the safe. And he said, "I got some mail." I said, "Yeah, I believe you do." So I get in the safe and make her looking for it. And I said, "Oh, here it is." And I said, "You are so-and-so?" And he said, "Yeah." And I handed it to him, and man, I got pushed out the way, and the inspector come on running out there and threw him up against the wall, and he was found guilty. I went to trial.
Did you have other examples where people tried to influence you or find out like people's home address or something like that?
Yeah, people are always trying to find out home address, and but I had we had a lot of CODs in that day, and I hated COD because it was too much paperwork. They come in, you had to make notate of it when they come in. You had to send them notice every so many days, almost every day for so many days, and then if they didn't pick it up, then you had to make another notation, and you had to send it back, all that kind of stuff. I hated them. But anyway, this lady had a COD, and she came down. I called her a witch doctor. Well, not everyone called her that. She lived up around Scuffletown, and didn't see that much of her. She came down, and the only person I ever had try to Jew me down in price. And she pulled out part of the money, and I says, "No, that's not enough. You need so-and-so." And she'd go another part of her body, pull out something else, and still not enough. I think she went clean down to her socks, and finally got enough, and give her what she wanted. And she was in some kind of practice. I never knew what it was. Very superstitious. She put lime around the house. She had a dog tied to each corner. A lot of people from D.C. would show, you'd see the tags on the cars that are parked in front of her house. I heard that she put a spell on somebody once, and he spoke in a whisper the rest of his life. So, things like that. Anyway, so Miss Johnson had died, and I was postmaster. And Ms. Johnston took over running, Bill Johnson's wife, took over running the store. And she ran it for a while, and then she rented it out, and the store may have been closed at this point. But along about 1975, I'd gotten sort of tired of working in that little post office on the side of the store. If you look at it, there was no running water in it. There was no, the heat was fine because it was a coal heater, burnt coal. No restroom. And so I'd gotten sort of tired of it. And it would get hot in the fall. Late afternoon, the sun would be right on that, and it would burn you up. All that, and I wrote them, and I told them, I says, look, I'm getting tired of having to run 100 yards every morning for relief. No bathroom facilities here. And I was a laughing joke in Charlottesville. But anyway, that didn't do too much. That didn't get too much headway. Anyway, so Ms. Johnston and I got together, and I got with Bob Clore, told him what to do. He had a vacant lot over there, and I told him what to do when they contacted him. And so I just had Ms. Johnston to write the letter asking us to move. And so when I told them also, when they wrote me back, and I told them I have a lot vacant to put a post office on. I didn't say trailer. I didn't know they were going to bring a trailer in. But anyway, they said okay and asked his name. And I told Bob, I said, now when they contact you, whatever you want, you double it. Because that's the way the post office worked. They're going to offer you half of what you asked for. So I told him to double it, and he did when he asked for how much rent he wanted on the land. And he told them, and they give him exactly half, which he was happy with. So April the 26th in 1976, I moved everything over to the post office trailer.
Now, at some point, there was talk about closing the post office.
Yeah, the post office from 1970 on really got in financial trouble. They made very poor choices. If you remember yourself, and people will remember, in 1970, the rural carriers, because of their strong union, would not deliver packages to a house. You had, if you couldn't pick them up at the mailbox, you had to come to the post office. They wouldn't do stuff like that. The big mail order places, the post office would not go and pick them up. And so therefore what happened, that's a mistake the post office made. And plus they had built all of these sectional centers to handle all over the country, to handle all this partial post. And yet they weren't accommodated. And what happened? United Partial come along and took the business. And they lost that partial post business. From then on, the post office was having trouble. And they couldn't close these small post offices because of political reasons. Well, I retired. The agreement was with the Congress that they wouldn't try to do anything until the postmaster retired. When I retired, it set in motion for this to be a possibility in Somerset of them closing it. And so by I don't know when we started negotiation, 94, 95. The trailer was getting in bad shape, and they got an idea that maybe they could close Somerset. Anyway, word got out that they won't have to move the office, and they sent a guy here from North Carolina, the real estate division. And they had taken it away from the Richmond office and put it in North Carolina, the real estate part. He came here, and his job was to, wasn't what he was supposed to do, I guess, but what he did made everybody mad. Well, he found a piece of property up on Route 20 by Old Black Blue Run Church. And that's where they're going to put it. And the guy that owned it at the time agreed to sell it to them. Well, that would have been the end of Somerset proper, and that's when I got into it. And that and the guy acting the way he did. And I told the people in Richmond that when it come time for me to go to D.C., to call me. And it came a point where they called me and said, Garland, said you need to go to D.C. Well, I didn't know anyone, but I knew June Funkhauser. the most powerful Republican woman in the state of Virginia. When the time come, June, David Bluefheart, and myself went to D.C. We had an appointment for postal officials. When we sat down the time of the appointment in the room, we had Tom Bilal's right-hand person in the room with us. We had Chuck Robb's right-hand person there with us. And from then on, they bent over backwards. That's why you have such a large post office right there now. I retired in October the 1st, 1992. Well, I knew it was coming, and I was waiting for it because I had to retire to take care of my in-laws. Both of them were getting up in age, and I was farming already down there, which was wearing me out in A and 2. I had mixed feelings about leaving. I did not hate my job, and I enjoyed it. A lot of experiences. It made me the person I am today, because when I went there, I was a shy little boy, and it made me had to talk to people. It made me to be able to get up and speak before people, and all of that. So it made me interested in history too. So I had a little nest egg there, and I went down farming and trying to make some money. For a short period, I had 100 brood cows, and of course it was 400 and some acres, 330 open, and so it worked me pretty hard there for a while, and also taking care of the in-laws. I had learned to be a cook and all that, take care of them.
Right.
Yeah, but then I found out that I gradually whittled the herd on down. Wouldn't be too big a job. And of course, I spent every little bit of nest egg I had, because the lime hadn't been put on the farm for years, fertilizer, the equipment was old, and open air tractor. The first year that I farmed there, I got fever blisters and sunburnt, and I told Ann that I don't have to farm like this, and I bought a tractor, air conditioner, things like that. So I spent my nest egg pretty quick.
Yeah, but then towards the end there, you had a couple close calls there on the farm.
Yes, that's why I got out of it. The first call I had was I was working about 8 or 10 bulls. Well, there was a few heifers in there too, giving them shots and vaccinating them, and either castrating or banning them. And they were 500-600 pounds by myself. Of course, I had a squeeze chute, and once I got them in the chutes, all right, and I had it fixed where I could work it by myself. But I ran this one old bull in there, and I had a metal gate there with the little runway to the squeeze chute, and I pushed the gate too quick, and he kicked that gate, and the gate come back and hit me in the mouth, chipped a tooth off, broke another one, and knocked me out, knocked me back in the other steers, in the other calves. And I come to, they were all around me. I wasn't out long, but I saw the stars.
Yeah.
Actually, I did see stars. Then, much later than that, then when I was getting rid of the herds, some stuff, it was one old cow there that wouldn't breed, and I tried I don't know how many times to get rid of her, and I run her in the truck. She was wild, and she went first. Before I shut the gate, she come back over top of me, pushed me up against the fence, and went out, and I got her back in there. She did the same thing again. The next time she went over the fence, broke that down, broke 2 gates down, and all of that. And I said, you know, I'm not making any money, I'm getting out of it anyway. So that's when I made the decision, and I did it gradually. You have to do it tax-wise. You got to get out of it slowly.
You also had another close call on top of a roof.
Well, Phil, one thing about growing up on the farm, you learn to do everything. You're jacklegging everything and master probably none. And anyway, I needed gutters on the house, a 2-story house here. And it was a hot July, and I had shorts on, no top, and just shorts and shoes. tennis shoes.
Girls were whistling at you, I'm sure.
Don't know, well, no, I don't go there. But anyway, up and down a half a dozen times. The last time when I come down, and the roof going out the kitchen door there at the time wasn't flat, it was tilted, and I had a ladder on it, and no one holding it. And I just gotten brave, and I just swung my leg around at that ladder. Well, the ladder slipped, and the ladder and I came down, and I fell 20 feet. Hit the ladder on the way down, and that caught on something, threw me back up in the air. I didn't even know, I remember the sensation of doing it, of feeling it. Ann said it, she saw me, and then she didn't see me. And then she saw me again, hit the ground. And I hit the ladder on my hip, and where the I-beam is, the top part mashed it clean down to the bottom part. It didn't break my hip. Anyway, I hit the ground and I fractured, compressed fracture 3 vertebrae. When I hit the ground, it knocked the air out of me. I saw the light. All I could see was white something. That's all I could see. I couldn't see blue. I couldn't, nothing. And but thank goodness I got over it. When I got to the hospital, I was using nails, spike nails, a gut of nails, which they're 8 inches long, 10 inches long. And I heard the guys in there talking, x-ray, and they come back and they said, please tell us that you got something in your pocket, hip pocket. I said, oh yeah, I've got a nail spike back there. And they cut my trousers up. Yeah, it could have gone in there.
Wow.
It could have, that's a close call.
Yeah.
That was 1980, July 1980. And I got over, my back doesn't bother me at all. It bothered me about 5, 6 years. Yes, the first I remember was watching my stepdaddy butcher, and but then when I married my Ann, her daddy was in the hog butchering business, and that's when I got into it again. And eventually I got Bill Roberts into it, and we'd butcher up here at his house. We'd go to about 3 or 4 different places, and the most, by 1980, we were doing 60 hogs a year. One funny instance I never remember, and I'll mention his name, a nice guy, I tell you, Buck Page had worked for John Woodruff. We butchered his hog, and he brought them down, and they were fat, too fat really, and he had them in the back of the pickup. We opened the tailgate, I reached in to grab one, well the other one come out. He took off running, and old Buck says, oh my Lord, he's gone, he's gone, he's gone. The hog ran all the way over to Hull's property before we got around him and come back and got him, and got up where we can get a hold to him and butcher him. I got into butchering cattle also. I do that too. I did a few of those.
Yeah. Now you had a pretty good curing operation too.
Yes, I got into meat curing, and I sort of learned that from Ann's daddy. Carried it a little more technique than he, and instead of burying the meat into a box of salt and covering it, I would put them up on a shelf where air could get around it. Lay a salt down and put the ham on that. Before I'd rub the ham in black pepper, salt, and brown sugar, and all of that, all the crevices and all that, and then put enough salt on it to track a mouse. And it depends on the temperature. If it's real hot, you've got to go back and do it over again. But I'd watch them, and if that salt went in, I'd put a little bit more salt. And therefore, you didn't have to soak it as much. The hams would cure. And I'd clean them up and hang them. I'd smoke them sometimes. I'd put boiled molasses, and I'd brush molasses on them when I'd hang them up, the hams. And got very good. Got very good at side meat. Got too good because everyone was asking for favors, and it got too much. I'm thankful that I'm as old as I am, because I have experienced so many transition periods from radio to TV, from horses. I've worked horses, from horses to tractors, just from railroad to trucks. It's a transition period.